You ever wonder why a buyer calls your price too high after admitting they have the exact problem that you fix? Now, if you think about this one, you're halfway there, right? Because half the time, just trying to get a buyer to admit they have a problem that you solve, that can be challenging. So in this case, you've really checked off a giant item to be able to say they're on the record saying they have a problem. Now it's a matter of, are they willing to pay the price to solve that problem, right? So if we map this out, in the center, we have the problem. And over here, we have your cost. Okay. So you were saying, hey, to solve this problem, it's going to cost you X, whatever that is. Now, this is where things get tricky, right? Because when people think about pricing, pricing is relative, right? What is expensive? What is cheap? There's no way to determine that unless there's some kind of comparison in your mind, right? So people don't look at a price in a vacuum and just say, hey, this is a fair price for this. There's a lot of things kind of happening behind the scenes. And the more that you kind of understand what a buyer's thinking and how they're gauging whether you are too expensive or not, then all of a sudden you can think about how do I kind of overcome that or at least shape their perception. But if you don't know kind of what's going on over here, it's really difficult because then you're just trying to just justify over here without really knowing what is it that's kind of dragging them down and not allowing them to see the value of what you bring. So if we jump to the buyer side, from a buyer side, there are 4 things that kind of go through their mind when they're thinking about this equation, right? Because what you want is you want this to be equals, right? So this problem equals this cost. The reality is they're trying to say, no, it does not equal that. This is way too high. Why don't you take off a couple of these? And now the equation will balance. And so on their side of the kind of equation here, part of what they're thinking about first is size. Okay. So when they're hit with a large price tag, the very first thing they're likely going to do is think about the size of this problem and try to minimize it, right? Because if the problem's not that big, then it definitely doesn't justify this big a cost. So that's one of the reflective things that they do is just as soon as they hear that giant price, they immediately start shrinking in their mind to say, no, it's not that big. It's not that, kind of pressing. And so there's a shrinkage of that problem. And therefore, this price seems outrageous. Now, the second thing they try to do is think about the impact of the problem. So even if they can't shrink the size of it, they can think about, well, it is a problem, but is it really that big a problem? And is it more of just a mild inconvenience? Because we can do some workarounds. Yeah, you have to kind of put in this system and then you have to manually move stuff around. So they start to try to justify it's just not that bad. It's just, again, it's just an inconvenience. So they really try to minimize that impact. Another thing they do is they start thinking about urgency. Because maybe the way that they can kind of push back on your price is to say, okay, I mean, it's an issue, but we have a lot bigger issues going on. And I'm definitely not going to spend my limited budget on something that we can solve in 6 months or a year from now or 18 months. And so they're kind of deferring the cost. And so that allows them to be able to say, I'm not going to spend this amount of money because it's just not urgent. But maybe if you discount it, then all of a sudden we can make it urgent, right? And then the final thing that they're thinking about are alternatives. And the alternatives are, you are not the only way to solve a problem. And so now all of a sudden they start thinking about, I mean, surely there's got to be other vendors that can solve this, or maybe we can, figure it out ourselves. And so they start thinking about alternatives that would be less cost. And now all of a sudden they don't have to pay your price. So any one of these or any combination of these can help them say, no, you're not worth it. And while you can't control what they do over there, at least if you understand what's going on in their minds, then you can kind of help them through the logic that says, yes, this is big enough to worry about. Yes, this is impacting your organization in a material way. Yes, this is urgent and there's real risk if you delay. And yeah, there is alternatives, but each one comes with a hidden cost. So while the price tag might be less, the fact is there's going to be some hidden cost in there that's going to come back to bite you. And so if you kind of know the mental blockers or defense that they're going to be throwing up, then you're better positioned to be able to kind of take those, not be thrown off by them, and really help them kind of work through it to be able to understand the full equation, right? A lot of times when I'm working with sellers, I'll tell them, the real goal of selling is to be able to help buyers make an informed decision. So while you might think, hey, if I can use all this, I can manipulate them into buying from me, the fact is, if this stuff really shows that you aren't a good match, then you aren't a good match. And it's okay to admit that, because they're going to respect the fact that you can kind of say, I understand your situation and here's reality. But the more that you can kind of understand their world, the better position you're going to be to help them make a smart decision. And that's what they really appreciate and value.